Open up, Colorado. It's 420. Time to grind and burn.
This is not your son's stoner show.
Welcome to the Cannabis Community Project. I am Brainstorm, bringing you your weekly podcast from the CCP studios high up in Denver, Colorado. Here exploring the business side of this newly emerging Colorado economy, focusing on the business, the patient, to the retailer, even the geek in the garage creating that next innovation in cannabis. This is the first media platform to help fellow cannapreneurs build sustainable business models while living the lifestyle. Thank you for joining us for today's show. We have a great one lined up for you today with the Cannabis Commodities Exchange, giving us all the ins and outs of what the future of the cannabis industry and laying the groundwork for creating efficiencies in the market. Dispensaries, growers, they got to get it out there somehow. It has to meet the market balance. And these guys have it. I think they got their thumb at least on the pulse of something. Not sure what exactly it is yet, but we're going to follow them and watch them develop. And we sat down with them at their place of business. I had the chance to really pick their brain and find out what do young entrepreneurs nowadays coming out of the university with finance degrees, what are they looking forward to? These guys look towards cannabis and they're going to tell their story. But before we do that, let's quickly look back at last week's short-term memory flashback. Do you remember last week's show? I'm forgetting it already. That's why we have to do this. We have to do this because we want to make sure each and every show has the opportunity to truly deliver its value. And if you forget it, well, it's just not going to work. So take a couple minutes here. Remember what we learned last week. If this is the first time listening in, go back, listen to the full episode, and make sure to hit the like and the share and the follow and all that and the comment buttons. We appreciate that. And that helps us greatly move on up the ranks of iTunes and Stitcher and the interwebs to get the word out there. Last week it was just me doing some confessions and Twin News, a little bit of personal ranting on Twin News. Let's take a listen back and hear what I was ranting about last week. Internationally, there seems to be this similar-minded policy, except for these little pockets of places like Uruguay and Portugal and a few other places, Amsterdam, Colorado, Vancouver, a few other places in the world that get it. But other than that, the world seems to have an international policy. But regardless of all that, people need to just pay attention to what is happening in Mexico and what has happened in Mexico over the last, 10 years, if even that. But how this devastation on the country, this war on drugs, has caused a true war to break out within the country of Mexico because of drugs. It is insane violence. The same insanity of violence that we see in every other drug-stricken place, whether we're talking about alcohol or we're talking about crack epidemics or anything else. When you have illegality based around drugs, extreme violence breaks out. To be honest, I'm a supporter of the movement that drugs is a healthcare issue, a health movement, not a criminal one. So when you make it a criminal one and you make it part of that system, violence breaks out because it's the square trying to fit in the hole. It doesn't fit. It causes friction. So the insanity of this war on drugs is only to the blindness of the media and to the public to what is truly going on with the war, where people are dying and families being ripped apart and whole towns. My wife comes from one of the most violent places in Mexico, Michoacan, where literally the narcos have taken over entire towns with kidnapping, extortion. Drugs is almost becoming a back burner issue, a secondary issue, because now it's just criminal activity. The drugs was the beginning genesis of where the money was and what people were following, but then the soured money just led to criminal activity, which breeded criminal. Extortion, thuggery, kidnap. Drugs is one of those things on the checklist, but inevitably everybody knows it's going to go away. Once marijuana is wiped out, cartels will be virtually bankrupt because the other drugs being produced and trafficked are minuscule in percentages of usage. The users using methamphetamines and ecstasy and all these other drugs is tiny compared to the actual market of marijuana. So once legalization takes hold across and the market is wiped out, we need to change the culture by changing the economics. Let's no longer make it the most sought after job for young people to make money to get themselves out of their poverty or working for 5 cents an hour or whatever type wages they have. I've seen it. People literally working for 10 pesos an hour, 20 pesos an hour, which is the equivalent to $1 or $2. And the story of, oh, well, their country doesn't need that much or their lifestyle is different. You haven't been to Mexico. Some of the wealthiest people live there, along with some of the poorest. But it is not a third world country, and things do not cost pennies on the dime. Things need to change. There it was, painless as can be, last week's short-term memory flashback. You remember what we talked about? Or better said, what I was ranting about. Maybe you have a business, an idea, or just some thoughts that you want to rant about also on the show. Contact me. I want to hear from you. I want to discuss all these issues on the industry. Everything the front of the line with health, legal, food, growing, technology. I want to know how entrepreneurs and business people are starting their little projects in the cannabis industry because other people need to hear about it. So don't be shy. Reach out via the webpage, Facebook, wherever is most convenient or wherever your medium of communication is. I'll get back to you as quickly as possible. We'll set it up. We'll get you on the show, or we'll just figure out a way to get you into the community. Hey, you remember last week when we started Twin News off, I mentioned there was a slight addition to it, a classifieds that we were going to start doing, a Canna classifieds, where if you have something to trade, sell, barter, anything that you'd put in the back of a newspaper, well, send it in to me, and I'll announce it on the air and see if we can't make that process efficient. Now, I'm not doing what the Cannabis Commodities Exchange is doing, so don't contact me if you got product to unload or if you're looking to purchase product. I'm talking about, like last week, we had an individual who contacted me because they have a 40-acre lot for sale just east of town, going towards Lyman. 40 acres ready to farm with a 40 by 20 square concrete base foundation all ready to go on it. Previously used for organic farming and now looking to find some hemp growers to turn it over and have them go to town with the new Amendment 64. So things like that, we need to get out there because nowadays it's an overcrowded marketplace. Everything from Craigslist, newspaper, I wish we could go back to the newspaper. It would make things so much easier. But this is the Cannabis Community Project, so if you have a cannabis community classified and you would like to announce that to the community, contact me. Once again, Facebook, webpage, all the same name, Cannabis Community Project. .com. Tell me what you got. I'll get it on the air, and we can see if we can get it off your hands. Classifieds. Let's quickly move into Twin News this week, your weekly update in cannabis news, everything that we're able to aggregate from our social media, not as reporters and journalists and all that kind of stuff, doing investigations and follow-ups and proper documentation. Nah, we just kind of scroll the feed, Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, find things that are cannabis related, cool the cool, best of the best, bring it to you and let you know about it so you don't have to go out there and really search the internet or the interwebs, as they say, to find all the cannabis news. This week in news, Twin News. Good news! Here we go. First up, coming out of the Moms for Marijuana International, posting about Minnesota. Have you heard about this yet? Breaking news out of Minnesota. The Senate, by a vote of 48 to 18, just passed an effective medical marijuana bill. Please share this news because people need to know, state by state, like dominoes, it is happening. Even if you try holding out, Kentucky, it's happening. Joining the sentiments in Florida, the Marijuana Policy Project, posting, according to a poll released yesterday, 88% of Florida voters support medical marijuana. It's just happening. There's no stopping it. And I don't know why states aren't jumping on board now. Do you not see what's happening? Do you not have the ability to look forward into the future and see what's currently happening? Moving on. Interesting. Have you heard of marijuana juicing? Such a versatile herb. Drug possession laws sharing a photo about the benefits of juicing marijuana. Not smoking, not infusing, but blending and consuming like your morning smoothie. There's a lot of benefits to cannabis, to hemp. Some of you may buy it in various forms of powders, protein powders. Hemp, cannabis, very nutritional, so there's benefits in all forms. Yet to find a negative, and I am talking about even inhaling smoke, but I won't get into that right now. Annual deaths every year. MarijuanaDoctors.com posting a very insightful statistic. As it turns out that cannabis is actually much safer than your average peanut. If you've ever been on an airplane and had it peanut shut down, lockdown mode, you know that peanuts are far deadlier than cannabis. At least from a person-to-person contact standpoint. Watch out. Tobacco killing roughly 430, 500,000 people a year. Being fat and poor exercise, 300, 350. Alcohol, 80, 85,000. Prescription drugs, 30. Motor vehicle crashes, 26. Homicide, 20. Aspirin, 7,600. Peanuts, 100. Cannabis, 0. Join the campaign. Cannabis Law Reform Clear, sharing their photo about the campaign Clear, Cannabis Law Reform, about regulating prescription, and join the campaign for medical cannabis on prescription and regulated access for adults. If you don't know who Charlotte Figi is, you should. Not only is her case proof that medical marijuana is an amazing medicine, it also shows how horrible these cannabis laws are that make it incredibly difficult for patients to gain access to their medicine. Read the full article at marijuanadoctors.com or the Facebook page. Very interesting article as we're hearing more and more about families coming to Colorado with their children to simply have access to hash oil and flower and other forms of cannabis consumption to help their sick and dying children. As we've stated before in many other shows, it is the sickness of the world we live in today that has rapidly come upon us in the last 10, 15, 20 years that has allowed for cannabis to finally be looked at as not only a cure, but also a prevention and a replacement. Money alone is not the force behind it. Because ultimately, ideology wins out money in the end. Profit money is not the root bottom line of those who want to rule the world and have access to large portions of wealth and money. Money is actually number two, unless it comes to an issue that can force its way through that, which is the health of a loved one or family member, somebody close to you. And then all of a sudden, money becomes less valuable. And now saving a life, securing a life is what becomes life. And when you hear and experience marijuana, cannabis in all forms, helping people, saving people, even then it's hard. Turn your back, look away, and pretend anymore. That's all the news you need to know this week. And that was Twin News, This Week in News, your weekly source for up-to-date cannabusiness. Hey, cannapreneurs, this week's show is sponsored by Dairy Berry's Recording Studio. Dairy Berry's Recording Studio, located in Arvada, Colorado, is your local recording studio with affordable rates. Mark is well experienced and will make your show, music, or any audio you have sound great.
tell that it's been hard for me. Private jets and fancy wheels, hardcore drugs and groupie love, big hotels and endless fruit meals. This fame, fortune, this celebrity, one day it's gonna be the end of me. This fame, fortune, oh, it's all I see. One day it's gonna be the end of me.
Like I said, I was from here, so I was like, I want to go back to Colorado and get into the new legal cannabis industry. And he was like, what a coincidence. Me and three of my buddies want to actually do the same.
You knew that this is what you were going to do as soon as
I turned down a corporate job to come up here and get into this industry. And then I got a corporate job that I knew was going to be here and that gave me the hours that I could work.
What's your background?
I studied finance and management information systems and minor in Spanish.
Que bueno.
Sí, claro que sí.
That's like mine. I have a Spanish tagged on to mine also. I did economics and sociology, but I did an actual humanities, which makes you pick two minors and then one major.
Okay.
So my third minor was Spanish also.
Nice, yeah.
On that one.
Yeah, I went to CU for 3 years and I transferred to U of A, and I was disappointed because I wanted to do a double major. I didn't want a triple major, and I didn't want a Spanish major, so they didn't have a minor program up there, so I kind of gave up on it. And then when I transferred, I was like, oh.
But I put mine to use because I actually went to Mexico and spent 5 years living and working there.
So you probably speak really good Spanish.
Fairly fluently. And my wife, who I met in Mexico.
Oh, nice.
We've been married for 6 years, speak Spanish in home.
That's awesome.
Because she's learning English as we go. So we met in Spanish, and then
Well, shit, you had good enough Spanish to get your wife. So.
Well, I actually think if I would have met her now with my development of Spanish, I probably wouldn't have been able to actually have it progress as so. But because of my pure lack of communication, I think it was more of a what would you say, more of a caveman communication where body language and universal language.
Human language.
So tell me your name again.
It's Sohum.
Sohum.
Yep.
Okay, excellent. What type of name is that?
It's a Sanskrit name. My parents are of Indian origin.
Okay.
My parents are first generation Americans.
No, just because my name is a little different. Also, I like to hear people with unique names, what their situation is. So, this is your business?
Yeah, we're a partnership.
And what is the official name of the business?
It's the Cannabis Commodities Exchange.
And what's the Green Consulting Group? Is that something different? Or?
The Green Consulting Group is composed of the 4 attorneys / to-be attorneys.
Okay.
So it's a partnership between them, a developer from Tucson named Will Farley, and myself, Sohum, or my company, SJ Shah & Co.
And the Commodity Exchange, is that part of this, or is that completely separate?
It's its own company. It's just owned and operated by a joining of the 3 of our companies.
Okay, excellent. Well, when I heard about it, I thought, wow, this is a really interesting idea. My whole show, just to give you a little base of it, is a show about the cannabis industry. So I focus on really the business side of the cannabis industry. What I want to do is really find the root of entrepreneurship and business through cannabis, because my overall mission is to help people become self-empowered and self-employed using this industry, which used to be a barrier for many of us. And for many of us, it was a barrier that kind of impeded certain parts of our life and forced certain things to happen that maybe if we didn't have, certain criminal charges or certain background history, we could have been or done something different. And now we have an opportunity here in Colorado. But one of the ideas was to find an outlet that used to be a barrier and help people understand that here's an opportunity to become self-employed, self-empowered. But you don't necessarily have to be a business person, right? You don't have to, I got a degree in finance. I'm looking at possibly an MBA program. Forget all that. You don't have to think of yourself as that way. What you have to think of it as, here's an opportunity to be employed in an industry that interests me and that I can thrive in, and thus get away from the minimum wage fast food or, the Conoco job and all of the other kind of non-opportunity type lifestyles that exist for people who maybe aren't given the chance to go to school and become lawyers or whatever, but that doesn't mean you have to be stuck in a minimum wage job. So that's kind of the base of the show. So what I'm really interested in is, where did you come from, you and your partners? And they're free to chime in also. They don't have to be silent partners. But where did this all develop from? I want to hear your story of kind of what it's about and what you're about in this whole process of life and emerging yourself in this industry, and how you came about.
Absolutely. And I think actually a lot of that goes into what you were just saying about your own personal interest in the industry. And I think that's honestly the point that we were all at when we were finishing up our final semesters of our respective schools, my partners in their final semester of law school and myself in business school. But it wasn't so much that, oh, there's a new industry, let's go in there because we can make money. It was more like, this is an industry that we all have something in common in, and something that we all feel very passionately about. And it's an industry that, should we be able to, and in this case the timing lined up perfectly. It's almost like a gift, that we're graduating at the perfect time for this industry to emerge, and it's something that we care about, and it's something that we can potentially apply the skills that we've learned through school into this industry and improve the industry. And given where the industry is at and where it was at the time, we all absolutely recognize the need for fundamental business practices and legal practices to help legitimize the industry and really help it bring it above ground. And Colorado, I think personally, has always been on the forefront of that with the laws that we have. A lot of other states with their medical systems, they had restrictions like dispensaries have to operate as nonprofit organizations or cooperatives or something like that. Whereas Colorado said, no, you know what? It's a private industry. We're going to let the market determine who the good players are and who aren't. And obviously there will be legal intervention as necessary, and we'll amend our regulations as necessary. But for the most part, they've allowed the industry to kind of come above ground on its own. And that's what we've needed, right? It's been a black market for so long. And a lot of the older minds are still fighting that counterculture war, whereas that's what we wanted to bring to the table. But like you said, it's not, we came here because, we just want to make money in this or whatever. It's that same idea that we found an industry that we all cared very passionately about.
And just to add a little bit to that, since I've had the chance to speak with some different representatives in the industry, from some dispensary owners and growers, to other people who are involved in regulation, have told me definitely the freedom to thrive as a private industry with profit in mind, but under a well-structured regulatory system. I mean, the difference between Colorado, California, and Washington that's been described to me by a few people of, why is the federal government, DEA, and local police so heavily involved in California versus Colorado, where it's almost hands-off, except for what just happened last week, but where it's almost hands-off. And the difference, I think, is the fact that Colorado really from the get-go decided it was going to be regulated, it was going to be a uniformed regulation, and it was going to be tightly guarded in the sense of what the rules were going to be to allow people to profit and thrive and so forth.
Absolutely.
And the seed-to-sale tracking and all the other things that have come through the medical system now into the recreational system, I think is really what's going to show the rest of the world how to do it in that sense.
Absolutely.
And that's where I like Colorado proud to be involved in that industry.
Absolutely.
When you guys got together, you said you had just finished up school this last year or a couple of years ago?
Last May, so May of 2013.
So you're just out. When you went into school, 4 or 5 years or whatever it was, 6 years ago, okay. What was your intention to do with a business degree? What were you envisioning?
I'll tell you straight up, I was just like every single other finance major that you meet in every freshman class. I wanted to be an investment banker on Wall Street. I had it all planned out. I was going to work for Goldman Sachs. I was going to make $120,000 a year right out of school, and I was going to be living the high life. And I mean, I still had the mind of working in Wall Street probably up until I had 1 year left in school. And that's when I really realized that Wall Street wasn't for me. My entire school of finance for the 5 years before that, my first week of class was when the subprime mortgage crisis hit. So my entire school has seen basically the collapse of the financial industry and the consolidation of God knows how many investment banks and commercial banks were out there before into just a bunch of big conglomerates. And more than that, I just realized like the general lifestyle that Wall Street bankers live did not fit my own personality. So
were you involved in cannabis at that time? What is you? I mean, you don't have to tell me specifically, how long you've been smoking or if you currently smoke. I don't really care about that. But were you involved in cannabis to any degree before versus obviously what you are now?
I mean, I would say I was a passive activist. Like,
okay.
I supported pro-legalization
through purchase and consumption support.
That and I mean, yes, that and in terms of trying to help get it on the ballot, if I could sign a petition or something like that. I'm not going to pretend like I organized any campaigns or anything like that. But like I said, I was a passive activist, if that even makes sense.
Where if somebody put a clipboard in front of you, you'd sign, but you wouldn't necessarily.
If you wanted to have an intellectual conversation with me about the war on drugs, I could have done that.
Right.
But I wasn't out there pounding the pavement and collecting signatures.
So when you were starting out business school, looking at Goldman Sachs, you weren't necessarily thinking, when I finish this degree, I'm going to do a 180-degree turn and put this education to use for an industry that probably at that time hadn't even really emerged to what it is now. I mean, 5 years ago, so it was kind of right at that tipping point where people started to realize, there's a medical thing that exists out there. And
so we've had Amendment 20 on the books since the early 2000s.
Yeah.
And we didn't start allowing dispensaries to operate in Colorado until 2009.
Yeah.
So there was a period of 8 or 9 years where you could be a registered caregiver or a medical patient, but it was still a black market. It was still somebody growing and selling out of their house.
Right.
And Colorado had a lot of issues with that. And the biggest roadblock to them implementing the dispensary system was federal enforcement under President Bush.
Exactly.
And as soon as Obama was inaugurated, and within a couple weeks, he signed some type of order that basically told federal drug enforcement to stop focusing their resources on medical marijuana in states where it's legal. That's when the Colorado legislature finally got together and decided that they were going to write a set of regulations for a dispensary system, and that's when they started to pop up. So to go back to your original question, if you had asked me 5 years ago, the county that I grew up in, Arapahoe County, is a pretty historically conservative county, red county. If you had told me 5 years ago that Arapahoe County would go blue in a presidential election, I would tell you that, I'm sure marijuana will be legal too. And you know what? Both of those things happened in 2012. So,
but you would have been a prophet, which wouldn't be surprising since people would be chanting your name anyways.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been sarcastic. I just didn't think either of those things were going to happen anytime soon. So.
Well, I think people have been talking about, obviously it's going to be legal for probably ever since probably the 60s.
Yeah.
People have probably always talked about, it's going to be legal. It's going to be legal. Just never knew when. So I don't think it's surprising that we've come to this point. I think it's just kind of overwhelming for people to realize how fast it's really developed.
Oh, yeah.
Because 2009 to 2000 now, that's not a lot of years for
5 years
to walk down the street and literally see corner to corner centers and recreational talk. And at the Cannabis Cup was kind of amazing in the sense of watching thousands of people just casually walk around and consume kind of openly and publicly under a city-ordained building.
I mean, it's definitely kind of weird, especially for people who come fresh into this industry from elsewhere.
Yeah, from out-of-staters are definitely...
Denver has more or less had that mentality and that attitude towards cannabis use for a long time.
That's true.
They decriminalized possession in the city and county of Denver in 2006, and they made it the lowest priority for Denver law enforcement. But even prior to that, one of the biggest supporters of that decriminalization effort in 2006 was the Denver Police Department.
Yeah.
They wanted to have a reason to stop citing people for possession and consumption.
Right. Because, I guess who in the police department is really supporting that, because I think there's a real conflict of interest. I think there's definitely those who look at it as resources could be better spent, and then there's those who look at it, but without this, what's the point of being a police officer?
Yeah.
Because what else are we going to do to interact with people? How else are we going to force our interaction onto people?
Well, at that time, Denver was dealing with a pretty big meth problem, where there were a lot of residential meth labs that were being discovered and blowing up, and that was kind of what pushed the city of Denver over the edge to, like, no, we really need to reevaluate our law enforcement budget.
Yeah, they needed to kick indoors of meth labs versus growers.
Exactly, and
so
I
forth.
saw an article in the Post maybe 3 or 4 years after that, where they actually did a quantitative study on meth lab busts and meth seizures, and they'd cut it by something like 75%.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and we're contributing to this industry right now. I mean, what you're doing, what I'm doing, what everybody's doing that's anyhow related to the cannabis industry is contributing to this overall environment, change of culture and mentality.
And legitimacy, really.
Yeah, legitimacy.
It's no longer hush talk.
It's funny because when I run into people who ask me, "Oh, what's your show about?" and I'll tell them it's about the cannabis industry, and they kind of give me that look of, "Oh, okay." They're not really sure what to say because they know me.
Yeah.
So they're not really sure how to take it. There's a real dissonance happening there in their
absolutely.
mind. But then what's even funnier is when you ask if they will support you in the sense of, will you come down to a show or will you like it on Facebook? There's a real resistance there.
Yeah.
Of, I have kids that, are on my page or.
Yeah.
And I really have to stop and go, oh, that's right. There's still people that haven't quite caught up yet.
And Denver is getting to the point where it's not quite like that anymore. Most people that I've talked to, they know at least somebody, whether it's a cousin or a relative or a friend, or they know somebody who works in some way in the industry. And it's not uncommon to go to a restaurant or a bar here and just overhear conversations about cannabis industry, going to dispensaries, events. The Denver County Fair is going to have a little cannabis exhibit this year. I mean, it's just beginning to be absorbed by the mass culture here and the mass population.
To the point where, yes, I agree. I concur. So where did the idea, the genesis of the commodity exchange come from? I mean, not the commodity exchange, but this marijuana or cannabis exchange. Who came up with that idea?
So when I moved back, like I said, everybody has friends in the industry, including my parents. So she just set up a meeting for me to be introduced to what's going on in the industry, and I had some of my own ideas.
Your parents are in the industry?
No. They know.
They had some connections.
Lived here for 30 years. Okay. Like I said, everybody knows somebody in the industry through one avenue or another. So they set up a meeting, and I told them some of my ideas, like staffing, and my first idea was to market cannabis like cigarettes, like pre-rolled cigarettes. And I realized pretty quickly that that's not the culture of the industry. Part of smoking the flower is the process of rolling the joint or the blunt or loading it into whatever. So I realized that wasn't plausible. I came up with other ideas, less capital intensive ideas, and just through the course of this conversation, they kind of told me about this need for some type of wholesale service within the industry. They said that everybody is already engaging in wholesale transactions, but it's what they'd be doing in the 1980s when they have a phone list and they're calling people. There's no centralized platform. There's no central location. There's no central place where it's happening. So I had that in mind, and my degree in finance, my mind was already running wild with different ways to, I was thinking 10 years down the line, when it's legal everywhere and we have this wholesale exchange. But, I grounded myself a little bit. I'm like, all right, so where are we at right now? And I came back and I started talking to my buddies, and, we really started flushing out this idea of creating a centralized wholesale transaction platform for Colorado licensed cannabis businesses.
Well, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, when you hear it, it's like, why not?
Yeah.
I mean, you have a commodity. Obviously, there's going to be extreme inefficiencies in each individual business.
That's exactly where my mind went first is, let's go back to the fundamentals of finance, right? How do you define liquidity? Liquidity is how quickly can you convert any given asset into cash. cash obviously being the most liquid asset because it's already cash. So when you're talking about the liquidity of inventory in this industry, you're talking about flower and concentrates and other products that are sold in dispensaries. Now let's go back to the scenario of how they used to perform their wholesale transactions. They would have a list of, say, 20 people that they've done business with in the past, and their phone numbers. They go one by one down the list and say, hey, I have a surplus of 10 pounds of whatever strain of flower. Do you need it? This is the price. And the person says no. Say they get 10 people into the list. Maybe they've spent 30 minutes, maybe they spent an hour, maybe they spent 2 hours talking to all these people. They get to person number 11. They call them and they say, yeah, I got 10 pounds of this, here's the price. And the guy says, yeah, I'll take it off your hands, but I want a $1,000 discount on it. This dispensary owner or manager is now faced with a dilemma. Do they continue on going with the process that they've been doing and risk not finding another buyer, or do they accept the $1,000 premium on the sale and just get the cash that they need to fulfill what other transactions they have? So that was one side of it. We're reducing the inefficiency in the market by increasing the liquidity of the underlying asset, the inventory that they have.
Well, it makes sense from a layman's standpoint. I mean, I don't have any deep knowledge of finance, but it makes sense just thinking about the basic sense of bartering, right?
Yeah.
You have somebody who has excess, and you're looking for somebody else who has less than their need to suffice whatever.
Yeah.
And you're trying to find some type of value to put a price on it.
Exactly.
So it makes sense, and I think any layman person could understand it. Does that mean it's open to the general public, or this is strictly a dispensary to dispensary type business?
This is strictly business to business. So one of the things that we do prior to allowing somebody to create listings and engage in transactions is obtain a photocopy of their Marijuana Enforcement Division license and a driver's license of a licensee who's associated with that. That's one way we want to absolutely make sure that there's no illegitimate transactions happening on our exchange. Unfortunately, that means that, the average retail consumer cannot go on and use our exchange.
There's some due diligence that you have to do by
Absolutely.
law, or just out of the business model you've constructed here?
It's both. There are laws, and the last thing that we want to do, like I said before, we're here because we care about the industry and we want to see it become a legitimate, real industry. So one of the things we want to do is make sure we're following every regulation to a T, if not even more strictly than that, because that's how the industry will become legitimate. Without having, illegitimate transactions happening on the exchange, then it raises the question, like, this industry really isn't legitimate yet. It wasn't ready yet.
So you're not actually moving the product around, right?
Nope.
You're not receiving, or you're not warehousing. You're not doing
Nope.
anything with the product. You're the median.
And that's part of the rules. The rules say that the transaction has to be conducted on the premises of one of the two dispensaries or businesses.
So dispensary A is responsible for transporting product or
that's
whatever.
up to them whether it happens at dispensary A or dispensary B, but it has to be agreed upon, and it can only be in one of those two locations.
Right.
They can't meet in some parking lot somewhere, or they can't meet in our office. That's absolutely not allowed.
It has to be one of those two individuals that are involved.
The transportation of it from one facility to another has to be documented with the Marijuana Enforcement Division as well. They have to send in a transport manifest.
And as we saw at the Cannabis Cup, there's definitely a number of businesses, transport businesses, popping up with the armored service and the courier service and the whole deal. Very good. I mean, if I were a dispensary, I would obviously want to take advantage of this, because every dispensary I've talked to is definitely trying to find that fine balance of, how do I grow? Obviously, I know how many patients I have, but because other non-patients are allowed to come in and purchase, I'm always left with that dilemma of how much do I grow? Because we're not talking about a commodity like dried beans in a bag here. We're talking about something that day by day is shrinking in weight, size.
It's a very short shelf life, if you will.
Exactly. So how do you account for that in your exchange?
Well,
or do you
have to,
since you're not really dealing with the physical product.
And that's where we don't have any desire to manipulate the market or steer it in any specific direction or influence prices. We don't take any transactional fees, so we don't have this inherent conflict of interest where we have an incentive for transactions to have, higher values because we make more money off of them. We just wanted to create a platform for businesses to connect with one another, and essentially the service allows them to dictate the terms of the entire deal amongst one another without any the only reason we're there is if people are not negotiating in good faith, or we're there to maintain the actual back end of the website and make sure that it's there and add new features and try and improve the product, but we don't necessarily have any incentive to manipulate the market in any direction. So yeah, it's really just a place for business owners to connect, and it's a centralized place for everyone to see everything that is listed. And it goes back to what you're saying with supply and demand. There's this huge issue with supply and demand in the industry right now, and part of it goes back to the original medical rules, which have a 70% vertical integration requirement. So dispensaries are required to grow 70% of the product that they sell, and that
on premise.
Yep, on premise, or
which is a detail, but a very crucial detail.
Well, they can have a grow facility that's somewhere else, but it has to be a licensed OPC, optional premises of cultivation. It has to have a license from the MED. The location has to be within code and everything, and they have to apply for additional licenses if they want to expand their grow. And that just
and most dispensaries don't have that type of capital and resources.
Yeah,
most of them are closet. Working out of closets and struggling.
It's starting to get bigger than that, but yeah, you're right. There's a handful of them that have more than one location that can afford to have multiple or very, very big grows.
So how do you make money if you're not collecting transaction fees? What is the business model here?
We charge a monthly fee, and that's it.
Okay, so it's a membership fee.
Yes, exactly.
You're part of the exchange, I guess. Yeah. You're a member of the exchange, and the membership fee covers tech support.
Any issues with our website we'll address immediately.
So is that what the exchange of product service is? It's the website in exchange for membership fee?
Essentially, yeah.
Okay.
We're providing a platform for them to connect with one another, and we've developed a platform specifically for dispensary owners, and we've tried to optimize the layout and everything so that it's very easy to use and very quick to engage and complete transactions.
And it works like other websites, maybe a freelancer.com, where basically you type in what you're looking for, what you need, a list of people from around the world. In this case, it would be from around the state. Pop up of what they have. You choose or communicate with various individuals, and then ultimately select one, or is it a blind exchange?
No, absolutely not. And no, that would be. There's too much differentiation between products from different places. Realistically, no dispensary owner is going to commit to buying something unless they know who grew it.
Right. So there's a whole documentation that comes with being part of the exchange.
And that goes into the seed to sale tracking requirements required by the state. Basically, it's more actually like an eBay if you think about it, where we've kind of controlled the flow of how they create a listing. So their first option that they choose is a category. So is that flower, concentrate, edible, topical, tincture, shake, trim, pre-rolled joints, seeds, clones, whichever one it is.
So they can really get specific on what they're looking for and what they're looking to get rid of.
We figured that's part of the value of the website, is that search functionality, that we make it very easy for them to go through the process of creating a listing. So they're just selecting options for the most part. There's an option to add more notes and create a description and edit the title and all that, upload a picture. But we've kind of controlled it, and it helps for searching. So you can search concentrate. Say you click on concentrate, and then there's other things. You can choose a strain if you want. You don't have to, because a lot of concentrates are just not strain specific. Then you can choose the extraction medium. So was it water and ice? Was it alcohol extraction? Was it CO2 extraction? Was it butane extraction? And then you can choose what's the final product consistency. Is it butter, wax, shatter?
I'd say it's almost more like a dating website, getting so specific in that sense, where you're really picking out.
Probably pulled some
long walks on the beach
from, maybe I don't know, Match.com or eHarmony.
Right. That's very specific, and the security is inherently the fact that you're only allowing registered dispensary to deal with registered dispensary. So the security is kind of built in the sense that all parties are already above board working from a valid, license standpoint, working from a valid product standpoint. When we get that
license, we get that photocopy of their license. The first thing that we do before we let them start is we call up the MED office and make sure that they're in good standing. They're not on suspension or on probation for anything like that.
And is that something the general public can do, or do you have a special access of?
No, I mean they actually do. They publish a list on their website.
Oh, okay.
That it's under their news section. You can see.
So as a patient, I could call up that office and ask them about my, hey, I just went to this.
In fact, I think they would. I would think they would appreciate that, to know that you actually want to make sure you're buying from a legitimate shop.
That's good. That's interesting to know. I don't think a lot of people, if anybody, probably knows that.
I think maybe the opposite. I think people look for those shops that kind of go under the table. Maybe they can get a good deal or something like that. But
knows that you can call up the state and verify a place you went into, whether they're an actual dispensary or whether they're working.
They might even just
table.
refer you to their website, because they have, like I said, they publish a PDF on the first of every month where they have all their licensed dispensaries.
Oh, that's good. I'm going to have to link to that one on my page, because that sounds like a good resource.
It's separated between medical and recreational, and it has MMCs, so like a dispensary, and then it has OPCs, and then it has MIPS, so infused product manufacturers.
Interesting. And what category do you fall under?
None of them.
None of them.
We don't grow. We don't touch any final product. We're an ancillary service.
So your registration with the state is the same as me or anybody else?
Yeah, we're essentially a consulting company.
Okay.
We've just consulted to provide this service, or a web-based company, however you want to look at it.
It has an exchange of private members on the site.
Yeah, and the private members are expected to abide by all the regulations that are set forth by the state, and we do our best to ensure that they do. But beyond that, I mean, we don't have any special designation.
Do you handle disputes? Has there been any disputes?
There have not yet.
Okay.
We have addressed the fact that it's possible, and we've actually do have a built-in review system.
Right.
So if you think of like an eBay or an Amazon, where somebody who's engaged in a number of transactions gets more positive reviews.
Right.
You can see how many reviews they have and what the average is.
Is there a limit to what a dispensary can put up for sale, I guess, is what they're doing essentially, right? Is there a limit? Can they say, hey, I have 10 pounds of excess
The limit really pertains to their 70-30 rule, right?
Okay.
It just has to do with, are you selling more than 30% of what you're going to sell in the store? And are you keeping less than 60% or less than 70% of what you're growing?
So if they're a large, like, Patient's Choice, if they're a large multiple multiple locations, they could put onto the exchange a large quantity of product.
The person who's buying it is expected to abide by the same law. But if you think about how it would happen without the Cannabis Commodities Exchange, if they're calling one another...
Craigslist.
Yeah. Or even if they're just calling one another, how they were doing it before with their wholesale transactions.
Yeah.
And they could do the same thing. Really, when they're going to get in trouble is when they get audited and when they submit their information to the Marijuana Enforcement Division and into their tracking system. When they run their numbers, you had this many sales and you grew this much, you're in violation of the 70-30 rule. So ultimately, I think that's something that would come out later, regardless of whether they were using CCX or whether they're using any other platform.
Right. So it has to be legitimate in the sense there's no real advantage to try to overgrow. There's no real advantage because the trouble you're going to get yourself in isn't going to outweigh the money you're currently making by just abiding by the rules.
Yeah. I mean, really, if you think about it, there's no added incentive to violate the rules or grow. Right. There's no more than there was before. If they can find a buyer for it, then willing to break the law, then they're going to do that.
Yeah. I mean, there's no real advantage in a legal system because, as we're talking about, it is a commodity. So it's not like we're talking about gold in a tangible sense.
Yeah.
We're talking about, at the end of the day, a commodity that every day is getting cheaper and cheaper in the marketplace. And this is what I tell my friends who grow on their own and ask me where they can get rid of, hey, I got my 12, I'm only needing this much for myself, but I just happen to be able to grow this much. You know where I can get rid of? No.
Yeah, you can give it away as gifts.
And even then, people are going to be like, no, I'm cool. cool. I got my own.
Yeah.
I got my own center I go to.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is like that.
So I agree. I think.
I think the thing that we really want to do and what we're trying to do is help the market prices come to an equilibrium.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to see this inefficiency in the market where a business owner has to take a premium to make some type of inventory-related transaction.
Yeah.
Because that cuts into their margin, and it's not reflective of any other efficient industry, and eventually the industry is going to get there.
Mm-hmm.
We just want to help it get there.
So, what's your opinion, or maybe you have some data to back it up? What's going to ultimately be the future of this industry? Is it going to be in concentrates and edibles, or is the flower still going to thrive?
Well, I mean, honestly, I don't think flower will ever go anywhere.
Not disappear, but become to the point where
I think dabbing and concentrates and edibles will always be around, and they have been around for a while. You just hear more about them now because it's a novelty. A lot of people just don't know what it is. They haven't heard about it. People have been dabbing concentrates in California for 10 or 15 years, and edibles have been around since the 1970s. And it's a new idea. Whereas flour is still packaged and handed to you, not exactly in a Ziploc bag, but in a little container, and it looks the same when you pull it out. Whereas you can go and get a packaged edible with a branded label or a concentrate that's been produced in a laboratory versus in somebody's kitchen or something like that. So it has this novelty, but I just don't think that the concept of flower will ever die out. I think that will always be prevalent.
I'm looking at it more like the middle-aged businessman who wants to start smoking again, maybe. Or maybe he has always kind of done it, at the Christmas party, or a friend's party, but now wants to consume on his own and is left with the option of, do I smoke a flower, which is obvious from a smell, a visual, the product itself, or do I get one of those cool pens with some oil that I can kind of sneak down my shirt, take some hits?
Nobody knows.
And this is what I'm looking at is when I think about is what's going to really start to become the market. Is it going to be concentrates and oils, not based on what do people like to smoke? To me, dabbing is the equivalent of like the few times when I go someplace and start doing shots. Yeah. I don't drink shots unless I'm at that place.
Yeah. Otherwise, you're just kicking back with a beer.
Exactly. Which is a bad, because I don't really drink at all. But but just the only thing I could think of doing shots. Most people save the shots for Friday and Saturday, not Tuesday afternoon. Yeah. So that's how I think about dabbing. I don't think of it like this is something I could daily do. Yeah. This would be a nightmare to do on a daily basis because it would be like doing shots on a daily basis. It's just
I don't get the same kick from doing a dab. I actually find it to be a cleaner high.
Really? Wow.
I'm still not a person who dabs throughout the day by any means.
It kicks my ass every time. And I think it's because I do it so infrequently that it still holds such a big punch. Yeah. And that's where I think the popularity and the exposure is coming from. Yeah. And this whole idea of the flame.
Fact that, the torch. The torch really, I think, draws a lot of, especially negative attention to it. Yeah. I don't think it would be as big of a deal, somebody didn't see a butane.
Because it makes you feel like you're doing something crackish.
Yeah.
It makes you feel like you're doing something where you should be hunched over behind a garbage can somewhere heating up a glowing pipe. So technology will have to catch up with that.
And I think the point you made with vaporizer pens definitely addresses that. That's definitely a very discreet way to consume cannabis, and I think you're right. A lot of people prefer that. I mean, just from my experience, I did bud tend at a dispensary here in town for a couple months. My experience, I had people that came in like that, older businessmen, maybe doctors, they haven't smoked in a very long time, if ever, and they just want to try it out. They just got their medical card. And a lot of them would say, I don't really want to smoke it. Like, I think I want to do an edible. And I would tell them, like, look, that's a whole different animal. Like, when you smoke flower, it goes into your lungs and into your bloodstream and up to your brain almost instantly. So you feel the effects. If it's too much, you're taking small amounts of it in each puff. You can stop right away.
Yeah. It peaks in valleys quickly.
Exactly.
Which is good.
And edible is based off of a whole lot of other factors. Your metabolism, for one. How does your digestive system even break down THC? If your brain has not taken in THC in years, how does your digestive system know how to break it down? That's when you get people who get sick or go crazy or have all sorts of other issues.
Hallucinating, the whole deal. That's so funny you say that, because just a couple months ago, my mom, actually in a semi-casual conversation, asked me for a friend of hers who was suffering from some extreme pain but lived in New Mexico, which is also where she works. State. Ironically, coincidentally, who lives in New Mexico, wanted to grow some plants, and she wanted to know if she could just grow some plants on her windowsill and then make some brownies. And I told her right off the bat, I said I would not recommend doing either one of those two things. Don't grow plants on your windowsill, because it's not going to be anything you want to consume.
Yeah.
And don't give edibles to somebody who's not a consumer of the product.
And don't maybe make edibles unless you have experience making edibles.
Right, exactly. Because I don't think people realize what you're pointing out is the idea of smoke versus something in your bloodstream. Alcohol. There's a reason why
really
we take alcohol.
It's biology. It's how is the chemical THC or other cannabinoids broken down by your body. And in anything, consuming it by eating it is always going to be less predictable, no matter what the substance is, what the pill is.
And longer.
Yeah.
And harder to get out of your body.
Exactly.
or at least to feel like it's out of your body. It may not actually be out of your body, but when you smoke, you can feel like you're no longer high, even if you may technically still be in that state of high or whatever some way can calculate it. But I thought that was funny, but what it made me really realize is here's that demographic. Here's a 60-plus-year-old person who probably back in the 60s and 70s maybe used it as a youngster, went 20, 30 years now without, and now wants to come back to it because it's an option, but they don't know how. Because what we do know is smoking is what dopers do, and stoners and people who are burnouts. So we don't want to smoke.
I think the vaporizer pen solves that dilemma perfectly. It doesn't have it's a pretty discreet odor. It doesn't really smell at all.
Right.
It's not the same really potent high that you're going to get from smoking a flower, and it kind of addresses that whole idea of, it's technology being used to influence the industry. And I mean, kind of to go back to your original question, I guess I don't think any of these are really the big future of the cannabis industry.
Oh, okay. So
the
what
future
do you see?
is hemp.
Oh, okay.
I mean, and that's something that, as stupid as it is that we've associated hemp and smokable marijuana for so long, they're distant cousins at best.
Yeah.
You can't smoke hemp. You can't get any recreational value from it. It's purely, an industrial crop, and it's more efficient than most of the industrial crops that we have right now. And if you look at our economy, right, we've had different bubbles, mostly very, very consistently since the late 80s, early 90s, which is when our economy started to shift from a tangible goods-based economy to a service-based economy. And, that as technology improves, other jobs are obviously going to dry up, and the more of those jobs are based on service and computers automate those jobs, that's why we have these bubbles of employment and within the stock market and stuff like that. But if you think about what was the last, great tangible good that the U.S. produced, it was the automotive industry in the 80s. And it was a huge job force. It spurred, domestic production. And that's exactly what hemp can do. We have so much farmland. Hemp is very easy to grow. It has a variety of industrial uses. Just the amount of hemp that we could grow in the Great Plains and in the central United States, we could sustain a lot of our need for textiles, insulation, cooking oils, anything like that. And not to mention how many jobs are going to be created by that.
I agree. I mean, I like that angle you took on it, because what you pointed out is what I think most of us get wrapped into when we start talking about this industry. We start thinking about the smoking, the recreational, the medical.
It's more scandalous. That's what we want to talk about.
The part of it that we're trying to make ourselves concerned with. But I think you're absolutely right. As far as what ultimate industry will be produced, hemp is going to far...
And the demand for hemp-based products is going to exceed astronomically the demand for smokable cannabis, because it has such a wide variety of uses, and there's so much area for it to be produced. There's I mean,
absolutely,
the demand is going to be astronomical, and we're talking right now about, pounds, dispensary owners buying and selling pounds from one another. You're going to be talking about bushels, tons of raw hemp fiber and, hemp seed and hemp seed oil and other derivatives of the hemp plant.
Based on that, how does an individual who wants to be involved in a commodity exchange from a hemp side of it work into this whole system? Because that obviously is going to require similar things. Hey, I just grew 40 acres of hemp. Who wants to take it off my hands? Raw product.
Yeah.
Raw product takes it off their hands, knocks it down to something else. Hey, who wants to take 80 gallons of oil?
Well, they just released the final rules for hemp earlier this year. Licensing, I believe, began this morning, actually, May 1st.
Okay. Nice.
So you can start applying for the licensing. So it's going to be a little while, and I think the state legislature and the marijuana enforcement division took the right approach. They focused, they knew the novelty. What everyone was focused on was recreational, smokable cannabis, and they knew that Amendment 64 said that on January 1st, 2014. Shops are allowed to start selling, so they knew they had to get their act together on those rules, and they did, and they made sure that there was some type of system that allowed shops to open on January 1st, and they did a pretty good job of it, considering how big of a task that is. And later in January is when they released the hemp rule. So as soon as they had that going, they had licensing going, then they redirected and they started focusing on. And that was probably the right time. They didn't need to rush into that. It's the winter. You can't really grow hemp outside in the middle of winter here.
Not yet, right?
Not yet,
but
not
with
yet.
the innovation of farming, which I've said for a while now, that it's going to be the cannabis farmers and the hemp.
Yeah. Well, hemp is
one and the same
naturally
that are
resilient crop.
Well, they're going to be the farmers that are going to lead the way in teaching the rest of the world, re-educating the rest of the world how to farm. Because right now, the concept of farming is it costs a lot. It costs a lot of resources, a lot of money, a lot of land, a lot of water.
Farms. I think we're going to start to see, the way that licensing works right now, and the way that it's probably going to some degree reflect the marijuana industry, is that you're going to see those subsistence farmers. You're going to see the small, 5, 10, 20, 50 acre farms, not necessarily the mass commercial, conglomerate owned hemp.
Well, compared to farming, 40, 50 acres may not sound like a lot, but 40, 50 acres is a pretty good chunk of land.
Yeah.
It doesn't compete with your giant farms.
And that's what I was getting at, is that it's still going to be more or less a small scale farm industry, at least to begin. I'm sure people are going to start buying out each other, and alliances will form, and it'll progress like as any industry naturally does.
Right. Well, coincidentally, speaking to you today about this is very coincidentally, because on this week's show, I actually have a small little segment of a classified section I'm starting, based on the idea of a friend of mine who's trying to sell 40 acres of land out by Lyman, and she wants to sell it to some hemp growers. And she asked if I would announce it on the show. And I was like, oh, there's a good idea. Matter of fact, why don't I just every couple of weeks find people who classifieds, right? Cannabis classifieds that want to do the same thing. So very coincidental. But I think it's going to explode even more and more, because there's going to be people just like that who she has 40 acres of land that she can't do anything with. It was only used for farming before, and there's not a lot of farmers really buying up 40 acre chunks of land.
And I think you're going to see a lot of people like that are going to be a lot more willing to lease their land for the purpose of agriculture versus, somebody setting up a warehouse and growing indoor hydroponic cannabis.
Well, which is great when you're talking about the smoking consumption. That's probably a good way to go about growing. A little expensive, but if you're looking at year-round type stuff, it's a good way of growing. Hemp, I think they'll figure out a way to make it year-round once industry sets in that, there's money to be made, because if there's money to be made, why take 6 months off out of the year? So if there's money to be made, I think it's going to be the growers of cannabis who show people, here's how to use a fraction of the water, a fraction of the land, a fraction of whatever, electricity.
Yeah.
Here's how to do it, because here's a whole history of people who have been working
Growing
about
hemp for this.
closets
Yeah.
and expanding into rooms, and then from rooms to warehouses, and they've been doing it under the radar, so they know
it's been
how
a
to
clandestine practice for so long.
And what better person to teach a farmer how to re-educate a farmer? Okay, so you don't have the money to flood your lands with water. You don't have the money to do 1,000 acres.
Yeah.
Nobody's really buying up what you're selling anyways. How about we take 40 acres, use a fraction of the gallons of water,
and break it down into smaller plots and lease it off to smaller groups of farmers. I mean, I think it's really like a good and a bad thing that hemp has been prohibited for so long. Obviously, it's a bad thing because we haven't seen, what type of technological advancements could be used in hemp processing and production and just the entire side of that industry. But the good side of it is that, we don't have genetically modified hemp all over the place.
Right. It hasn't been corrupted and taken over. I mean, the good, I see what you're saying. The good is that we've waited to the point where society's ready.
In society.
Right. And society's educated about it. If it would have been legal from the beginning, we wouldn't have been educated about it. We would know enough. We would know the same of what where your chicken comes from or where your wheat comes from. Nothing. You would know absolutely nothing. And some company would own the right or the patent or just monopolize the market. And we would all be fed hemp hamburgers that make us fat.
Yeah, you're probably right. It'd be
that give us diabetes.
It'd be the Monsanto and their genetically modified hemp.
I mean, that's a good silver lining. That's a good way to spin the negative. And the fact that sometimes when you restrict something, it allows the dam to build up, so it's a more forceful power when you release the water.
It's a more pure group of people that want to get involved in the industry, especially right now. Right now, the people who are here and trying to build up this industry, for the most part, I won't say everyone, but everybody can't be perfect. But for the most part, there's still this true sense of pride about working in the industry and being a part of that movement to help legitimize it and bring it above ground. And I think that hemp is going to have even more of that backing and that public support because it doesn't have the social stigma.
You're a hemp grower. You're not a weed grower.
Drug use. Yeah.
What does your mom think about what you're doing?
I mean, when I first told them a little over a year ago that I was planning on turning down a corporate job offer to come up here, and it was, this is less than 2 months after Amendment 64 was passed, less than a month after it had been signed into a law. And, they gave me the usual parent talk, like, you're crazy, you shouldn't do this, this is, what about the federal government, what about this and that? And, I'd done my research, so I could kind of have a little debate with them. And really what I told them was, like, I have such a passion for this industry, and the fact of the way that the timing is lined up for me, I think it would just be a mistake to ignore it. And especially when I'm young right now.
That was the pitch you gave her?
Yeah, I was like, I think it would be wrong to ignore the way that it lines up. I'm 24. I have 2 more years on your insurance. I'm young right now. I don't have a family. I don't have kids. I can afford to try and start my own company in a new industry. It's not going to happen any other time. And more than anything, I don't want to wake up in 30 years and see how well this is doing, or not even in 30 years, when I am 30, and see how much this industry has flourished and think, oh, I could have been a part of that. What could have been? I didn't want to think that. I'd rather come out here and try and fail than wake up one morning and wish that I had done what I wanted.
And she accepted it?
No, not immediately. They still thought I was a little crazy, and they pushed me.
You say they, so both your dad and mom were both on the same page with this?
Yeah, more or less. My dad, he's into accounting and finance, so he had a little bit more of an idea that there is a potential to be financially stable and work in this industry. But I mean, they were still against the whole risk factor. It's not federally legal. Like, it could get shut down at any time. There's no job security, and I kind of told them my predictions of how the government would react to the regs and what their attitude would be, which is more or less what has happened. So I think that definitely over the long run has established some credibility. But once they saw that I was serious about it and I moved back here and I was like doing everything I could, going to industry events, trying to meet people and trying to kind of cultivate this idea for a wholesale exchange, and they started to see how it came together, and my mom works in IT, so she actually helped really tighten up our back end, our database.
There you go. There's some built-in resources.
Oh yeah.
So where did you start? Did you start from a bootstrap? Did you start with your credit cards and some funds from friends and family, or did you start with
We've been bootstrapping it. I mean, up until the Cannabis Cup, our costs are pretty minimal. You know, we don't need to go around and market that much because we're not trying to appeal to the end consumer.
Right. Your market base is very fine. I mean, you got 2,500 some here in Colorado. I mean, very finite.
But it's very specific too, and it's for the most part like most dispensary owners and managers that we show this to, as soon as they see it, it clicks. You know, they see how this makes their life easier and helps them save money.
Yeah.
Helps them make
see
money.
It. Like I said, to the layman from the outside, it's pretty obvious what's going on here.
Yeah.
So you've been bootstrapping.
So basically, we wanted to cultivate the whole flow of how this would work, and we started getting distracted with we can add this feature, we can add that feature, but something that we learned in school, that I learned in MIS class is you want to focus on a core functionality. You don't want to spread your development too thin and try and build in too many features. It's Management Information Systems.
Okay.
So it's kind of like a business perspective on IT. So
okay.
We have an understanding of programming and databases and stuff like that. And
like how to keep your website from being an overflowing volcano.
It's just all different aspects of any different aspect of IT probably has some type of MIS tie to it. If you take that aspect and focus it in terms of how it fits into a business and how it makes a business more efficient or effective, that's when you get into the territory of what MIS is.
Kind of like a Six Sigma style of looking at operations, but this is specifically looking at information systems.
Yeah, and operations management. So if you think about like a production facility and they're trying to optimize their process of how they have different tasks that need to happen, and some of them have prerequisites, and there's a whole like diagram of how this production happens, but you can tweak it and try and cut down the tunnels and the run times on stuff and the stop times. So that's where you're still getting into operational efficiency, which could be MIS.
What are your main costs then? I mean, you have your location, which is some rent.
Yeah.
Your infrastructure. I mean, are you supporting some servers?
We have hosted servers, and we have a number of other tech-related, server-related services that we have that are not super high, usually monthly or annual fees that we pay for.
Okay.
And those are all really tied into the development.
And are you paying yourselves income as staff or employees?
I mean, we're not paying income yet. We're really just trying to invest whatever revenues we're generating. We want to invest it into the business.
Partners are at this time just partners, but not receiving any paychecks or anything yet from them. Okay. No. So, which is good, because I think a lot of times people have to understand what you have to do to actually get a business going. A lot of times people have visions of...
all of us collectively and individually recognize the long-term potential of what this business could do, and that's why we're all on the same page of like, we'll scrape by for however long it is, 6 months, a year, like whatever it is, we'll make it happen. And like I said, the most significant cost that we really incurred was our marketing costs for the cup.
Yeah, and that was kind of expensive for that one event. I mean, you're working another full-time job. Is that just you, or is that true for everybody here?
I mean, we're all working different full-time jobs. They have their consulting practice on the side.
What I wanted to get at for other people to hear is what it really takes to maintain a business when you're bootstrapping it, juggling other jobs. How many hours a week, what type of resources, because again, the intention is to talk to people about here's how you can be self-employed, but you're not necessarily a business person.
Yeah.
Right? You're not necessarily
I can give you an idea of what my week's like if you want.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's more or less the same, just slightly more specific for all of our different, other jobs. So and I work in corporate IT for a big corporation. It's a private corporation. I have to be there at 7 a.m. and I get to leave at 3. Generally, that's about it. I don't usually have any after-hours work, which gives me from 3:15, 3:30, whenever I can get over here, till however late we want to go, which, is usually at least 5 or 6 hours every night. And then Saturday and Sunday, we take it easy. We're not cranking it down, but we're usually together and talking shop, or, at an industry event, trying to get our face out there, trying to talk to potential clients. I mean, it's pretty nonstop. And I don't think any of us really notice it that much, because when I get off of work, I look forward to, like, okay, I can shift out of cubicle mode, and now I'm in CCX mode. This is what I want to do. I want to come here and call up people and set up demos and be like, yeah, are you free? I will come in right now and I will walk you through how our site works.
Well, you're personally invested, which I think most people understand in the general concept that when you're the owner, when this is your gig, picking up a phone and making a sales call is not picking up a phone and making a sales call. You're trying to reach out to somebody because there's something desperately that you're trying to get done, which is a different way of, when you're put in a cubicle and you're told, you got to call 300 times a day and you got to make so many sales, and it's so artificial and generic, you feel the burn of every one of those calls.
What it really boils down to is it's not impossible, but it's a lot harder to sell a product or a service that you don't personally believe in. Yeah. Whether you're necessarily financially vested in the business or the product really doesn't matter, but it's, do you truly believe in the service? Like when I tell a dispensary owner or an owner of a infused product facility, this is going to help you save time and make money, I'm not BSing them. I'm telling them straight up, we developed this idea for this purpose. We want to make this industry more efficient. We want it easier for you to reach your customers or your suppliers or your fellow dispensaries that you need to conduct transactions with. We want to make it easier, more efficient, make it so everybody gets what they want. One party isn't leveraging the other party.
And I would think, I don't know because I don't really know your business, but I would think it's fairly easy to aggregate enough data to kind of lay out for somebody, here's how an exchange works. Yeah. Here's how you're saving money, versus trying to sell somebody, a marketing program where it's a little more difficult to kind of forecast that. Yeah. It's not so black and white.
There's a very easy analogy, a historical analogy. Think about the Merc, right? The Chicago Mercantile Exchange. It's essentially a commodities exchange for all sorts of commodities that are not cannabis. So, different types of produce, different types of grains, petroleum-related products, livestock, pretty much anything. And now when you look at it, it's been cultivated for so long and improved and perfected for such a long time that they have everything to the point of publishing standard price information on a real-time basis. They have futures and forward contracts that are traded, or futures contracts that are traded on the exchange. But let's take livestock, for example, or produce. Farming, it wasn't always like that, right? At one point, it was, a guy who raises cattle, calling up a slaughterhouse and saying, "Can you convert these cows into meat for me?" And if the first guy says, "Yeah, I don't have time this week, I'm kind of booked solid, I have enough supply for a while," then you're calling around. But that's what this commodities exchange came in and did. It created a centralized place for buyers and sellers to meet. Supply and demand issues get fixed out. The liquidity of the assets increases because people aren't getting leverage and having to pay a premium to either buy or sell whatever they're doing.
Mm-hmm. And the physical transportation of goods.
Yeah, and it's still usually left up. You don't see people delivering 10,000 cattle to the floor of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange.
Which maybe, I can imagine, probably 100 whatever years ago, this similar type, just a center plaza, right? Yeah. Like town plazas, I guess, is kind of where the idea
or
of
like
the
a flea market.
Right, where you literally bring what you got, show it and sell it.
It's a marketplace.
And take it home at the end of the day. Yeah. It would take back what you got left, kind of
and
deal.
It's where a flea market got applied, that centralized marketplace idea got applied to something that is too big or there's too much of it to actually bring to a place. So you make a deal that, you have this in good faith. I will buy this from you. I will come and pick it up, or you come and drop it off, which is no different than how our exchange works.
So what's the competition like?
As far as we know, there are a few people who have tried this or currently have other types of wholesale services. Honestly, we don't we don't really get too much into that. We focus on developing our product and making sure that it's the best that it is. And honestly, we kind of let our clients decide, and we have heard that objection a couple times, but we truly believe that our product is
objection as in,
there's this other service, we tried it, we didn't like it, or I'm already on this other service, or I tried this, I said I would try this service, whatever it may be. And our natural rebuttal to that is just like, we truly believe that we have a more fundamentally sound product, and we really got down to the core concept of what service are we providing.
Right.
And we developed something that's very, very much so built around that single service. And it has a layout that's kind of similar to Gmail. So, you have your navigation on the top with a couple different tabs. So you have, your buy listings, your sell listings, and then your inbox. Mm-hmm. And then up on the upper left-hand side of the page under our logo, there's a little button where you would normally see a red compose button. It's a two-sided button that's blue and green for buy and sell.
Okay, so it's very intuitive and how you work
pretty
it.
much, if you've used any type of Google-hosted email, then you probably can figure out our system very easily.
But it is a valid, I don't know if it's an objection to not use it, but it's a valid concern to be concerned with which service do I go with if multiple exist, because it would almost be like, a New York Stock Exchange and going, well, do I invest in the Japanese stock exchange or the New York Stock Exchange?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I guess it depends on where you live and which companies you're trying to exchange. But what is the future as far as bringing the ability to have multiple exchanges existing under one? I mean, think of it like the Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
We have multiple
cryptocurrencies,
people out there basically creating this, but yet they have to be able to interact as one exchange. Or if you think about it like pre-federal money, you have individual banks all issuing their individual currency. How does the efficiency eventually come out where it's just one federal note that all banks got to use kind of deal, but yet they're still independent banks? Everybody's kind of got to be on the same page.
I think that's going to be defined entirely by the market. It's going to be which service do they feel more comfortable using? Which service are there more other people using as well? Like, really, the service is only as good as the number of people that are on it at the end of the day. If there's only 10 people on it and there's only 3 listings being created every day, that doesn't really help very much.
Kind of like a social media site,
Yeah,
right?
It's like you can create a social media site and it could be great. It could be, a million times better than Facebook in terms of functionality, but if nobody's on it, then it has zero value.
Right, which I think is what Facebook and people who are analyzing Facebook are kind of angling at.
Yeah,
that
it's
the
hard.
Clutch of Facebook is not the quality of content; it's kind of the social effect.
I mean, it's the fact that everyone is on it.
Yeah,
and that's where we get back to our idea that we truly believe that we have the best product provides this service on the market, and we believe that the market over the long run will show that, and we'll ultimately be the successful wholesale transaction platform.
Do you see a possibility for multiple exchanges communicating with each other? So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you said, there's I believe over 1,000 or 1,500 licensed marijuana businesses in Colorado. Absolutely. I mean,
I think the number I heard from Dan Williams at CSA America said 2,500 in the state of Colorado are holding some type of license.
I think 1,500 was the medical number that I was quoting. It's a couple of months old. So yeah, it's probably definitely increased with retail.
Yeah, with all the different types of
like cultivation facilities, retail centers,
which is a lot in the sense of if you're comparing it to zero, if you're comparing it to pre-keeping track, it sounds like a lot, right? And that's when I always chuckle when people talk about, whoa, this is an explosion. Well, compared to what? You were never keeping track before, so everything's an explosion.
Yeah.
But now that people are keeping track, compared to liquor stores...
Have you heard, you've heard probably the Starbucks analogy, right? They say there's more dispensaries in Colorado or in Denver than there are Starbucks. Well, that's fine, but why don't we create a real analogy? How many coffee shops are there?
Right.
There's not.
Why pick a brand?
There's not 500. There's not 500 of the clinic around Colorado.
Not yet.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna say dispensary, you can't target one specific brand of something like that.
Yeah, it's not a fair
it's not a correct analogy.
Right, because one is the overall market and the other is just a brand of what one specific brand in their locations does. And obviously that's the type of PR propaganda that's put out by those who are trying to create those reactions, which is our job to stop people in their tracks and put the hand out there and say, hold on.
Slow down there.
That's not a proper analysis.
It's not.
Well, I think you guys... Wrong. Well, I mean, it's not wrong.
It's not factually incorrect, let me clarify. It's not factually incorrect, but it's not an apt analogy.
And after you've analyzed it, then what?
Yeah.
It's like, and what?
Yeah.
So there's more than and what?
So I mean, then the question is, are you trying to compare
What's
caffeine
the
and
conclusion?
cannabis? Are we trying to decide which one is a more harmful drug or a less harmful
What's the
drug?
conclusion at the end of this statement? Because just simply stating there's a number of something that exists, if you kind of force somebody to think about it, means nothing.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that would be like saying there's 5,000 parks around Colorado.
It's like if you were watching the news and they just put a picture up of like a gorilla and then just removed it and didn't say anything about it. You're like,
right.
And?
Right. There's a 500% increase in gorillas.
Yeah,
Gorilla
you're like,
pictures being put up.
Where, when, how much, over what period of time, what kind of gorillas? There's a million other questions you have to ask.
Do you consider yourself a data information business here, or?
Not right now. We're truly here to provide a service to increase the efficiency of a marijuana licensed business's operations. Don't get me wrong, we definitely see the potential for the type of data that we will naturally collect through the course of our day-to-day operations, but we're not coming here like, oh, we just want to mine all this data.
Right.
We're here, like I said.
Potential value to be used maybe for researchers.
Yeah, research, or even just publishing it to help people be more informed about the industry.
Right.
I mean, I won't say the average person, but a fair amount of people could tell you what was the last price of an ounce of gold that you checked, or a barrel of petroleum. A lot of people know those figures, and there's no reason that
because
cannabis...
it's forced on us.
Yeah.
The media forces
so
that information
might be more
on
people
us.
that actually want to go out of their way to learn these numbers, but it's just like, oh, what is
what's the price of bud today?
What does a pound of bud go for? What is what is 10? I don't know. It really, at the point that we're publishing information, that we have enough information to publish something like that, I don't even know what the volume of a transaction would be at that point.
I like that kind of information because as much as in the industry I'm kind of out in the industry when it comes through to purchasing. Like if you asked me, what's the average price of an eighth at a dispensary, I probably couldn't accurately tell you because I'm not actually buying.
There is no average price. That's
but
the answer.
I'm not that consumer.
Yeah.
That's not where I get mine from. That's a different type of consumer that's in the industry. So I don't really know what dispensaries are selling their products for because that's not the conversation I'm having with dispensaries. And I don't know because I don't buy from dispensaries.
I mean, I've never bought a pound
like
either.
So. Even eighths. It's been a while since I've walked in a dispensary and bought an eighth because now that's not where I get it from. So in that sense, I guess maybe if you could open your Rocky Mountain News and there was a section in there, your
for
index
pricing,
pricing,
exactly.
It would be interesting in the sense of comparison.
Yeah.
Am I doing what I'm doing now? Is this even better? Maybe I should just go buy it from a dispenser. That kind of deal.
Where I see the real long-term potential of information like that is actually getting actuaries to come in and underwrite futures contracts on whether it's hemp or the smokable side.
Motion for actuaries.
Yeah, all you actuaries out there, come talk to us.
Hit up. Are you guys? What's the plan for the business? Do you want to hire employees eventually?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're not against taking outside investment. I think the biggest thing for us is retaining operational control and. Yeah. As we've been doing, we don't necessarily have a huge issue with continuing to bootstrap it if we can. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we all recognize that there will come a point.
Sale by sale, just build it up. Client by client.
Yeah.
Which might be better for this specific industry because you wouldn't want to blow up too fast with uncertainties in the industry. That might work good for tech or something else.
It works in any industry where it's established and there's already best practices and regulatory framework there that is not experimental.
Right, where the money you're injecting is going to help the sales of the product versus developing kind of an industry is a different type of investment and probably is going to require a different type of investor.
People, especially business owners, like most of them, I'll be honest with you, most of our people don't sign up because they found our website on a Google search and they're like, oh, this looks good, let me sign up and, pay some money for this. It's us going in there and explaining to them what the service is, them immediately recognizing the value of what it's going to provide their business, and they come to the conclusion on their own. Yeah, like, we need this. This is going to help us. We have supply and demand issues. We have surplus that we need to get rid of, whatever it may be. We have our website. The homepage acts as a landing page from most search engines.
And what is that website? We might as well give that out.
Yeah, it's www.canna, the letter X, change.com. So that's CANNAXCHANGE.com.
Very good. And you have all the social media the same, the Facebook?
Our social media handle is usually Canna Comex.
Okay.
So that's CANNACOMEX.
Okay. And can they call you directly and talk to you?
Yeah,
or?
absolutely. So our phone number, 1-800-498-3CCX, or 1-800-498-3229.
Cool. Well, it's been very informative. I've learned a lot, and I was very intrigued when I saw it at the Cannabis Cup. And I think other people are going to be intrigued too. I think this is an interesting idea, and I think it's going to bring out of the woodwork, maybe not from my show, but in general, these type of businesses are going to bring out of the woodwork the investors and the people who make the infrastructure of business happen. The lawyers, the accountants, the business people, the managers. It's going to bring out of the woodwork the infrastructure that's needed to solidify what's happening here in Colorado. So,
and that's kind of why we picked that.
I think you guys
name,
are heroes, actually, and I don't use that word. I don't use that word sparingly. No,
let's hold back on that one. But yeah, no, that was one of the reasons we really settled on this name, the Cannabis Commodities Exchange, because we like how it appeals to that higher level economics or financial perspective that business-minded people may have, and not even necessarily people that have college degrees,
Right.
And that's one of the coolest things I think about this industry, is that it's not like most places where people judge you based off of a piece of paper that you spent anywhere between 4 and 6 or 7 years getting, but rather, what's your experience in the industry? What do you really bring to the table? What kind of product do you grow? What kind of company do you have? What are you doing for the industry? And a lot of it, most companies that I know of don't do super extensive background checks,
right?
Because that's not the type of industry that it is, and that's not where we're at yet.
Yeah. Well, I one of my desires would be to sit down with somebody at a university who's telling me they're spearheading the cannabis program for a degree from an accredited university, where they're going to actually issue some type of degree in something. And I think that's very possible. I don't know if it's possible in the next few years, but that would be, I think, a great desire as an interviewer to be able to sit down and talk to somebody who's spearheading some type of educational route.
Yeah.
So you can get educated.
Some type of hybrid, maybe between like horticulture, maybe a little intro class on extraction, and then entrepreneurship and accounting and finance.
Yeah, definitely a hybrid, or maybe part of the entrepreneurial program down at Metro as part of the Center for Innovation. They have an entrepreneurial program.
I know the University of Colorado in Boulder has a pretty good entrepreneurship program up there too.
I think this would be a perfect fit for that type of education, because it requires
Denver,
that hybrid. There's not a
better place other than like Metro or UCD. There's no better place for them.
How many people would enroll, even if they didn't finish the degree, would just
enroll.
Not
to mention how much potential for jobs there are just within Denver.
Right. So, I mean, I think you're probably just one of many things to come in the industry.
Oh, yeah.
And
I hope so.
I think we should talk some more in the future and keep track of you guys.
Absolutely, I'd love to.
I appreciate it, man. It's been a good talk.
Yeah, definitely.
I appreciate it a lot.
Appreciate you having me.
Mr. Bossman, won't you work my time while I sit back and relax, unwind? Big fat bulls in my new rolls. Friends stop by to help me ease my mind. Can't you tell that it's been hard for me? Cradled in the lap of luxury. Wife's confused, nothing to do. Take her shopping, but she end up still. This fame, fortune, this celebrity. One day it's gonna be the end of me. This fame, fortune, oh, it's all I see. One day it's gonna be the end of me. Tell that it's been hard for me, sitting in the lap of luxury.
Thanks for listening to this week's show. Make sure to come back next week. We're going to have even more guests lined up, speaking with dispensary owners, growers, business owners, even musicians for more of our Musicpreneur episodes. Make sure to follow us on all of the social media, Facebook, Kush Common, Google+. You can listen to our shows live from the website or your preferred listening platform. Find us on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spreaker, even YouTube, all under the same name, CannabisCommunityProject.com. We'll see you next week.